Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." He replied, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge and arbitrator?" Then he said to the crowd, "Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions." Then he told a parable. There was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He asked himself, "What shall I do? For I do not have space to store my harvest." And he said, "This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. Then I shall store all my grain and other goods, and I shall say to myself, 'Now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this night of your life will be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? Thus it will be for all who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich in what matters to God." Hello and welcome to Closer Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Baye, your host, and we're glad that you can join us. Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me. It just goes to prove that the old adage is really true. Where there's a will, there's a relative. Yeah. All this stuff we leave behind so people can fight over it. And after they win and they get all the stuff and they leave it behind, their children fight over it. You fool. Don't you realize that if you're not rich in the things that matter to God, you're poor? I don't care where you live. I don't care what you have. I don't care if you've won the rat race. You're just the best rat there is. The challenge is to go through life and understand what matters and what lasts. And that's a real challenge today. I saw a commercial the other day, and it absolutely made me crazy. And it's a little girl, and she's coloring or whatever. And she said, "Look at me. Don't you think I'm cute? Get the dimples. Don't you think I'm cute?" And she says, "I think I'm cute, and everyone would want to be with me, but not my mom and dad, because they're cleaning all the time. They don't spend time with me when they come up. Now, hire yourself a maid online, do whatever, okay? And get to spend all this time with your kid." And I'm thinking, hey, kid, you're cute. Learn how to scour a toilet. Hey, kid, you're cute. Learn how to make your own bed. Hey, kid, you're cute. Learn how to clean up after yourself. But it's this whole idea that life ought to be so much fun. Life ought to be great. Life ought to be all about me. And Madison Avenue tells us that. You can have it your way. And I'm dying to be on the tour bus when someone says, "Does anyone here have occasional gas, bloating, or diarrhea?" Yeah, I'm going to raise my hand, okay? How bad off do you have to be for your 15 minutes of fame to raise your hand on national TV for gas, bloating, or diarrhea? But it's the miracle drug. Everything's going to be fine. You're going to be well and healthy and happy. And that's all that matters. Whew, where do these people live? Dorothy, we're not in Kansas anymore. It doesn't exist. Life is just not like that. I don't care who you are, what you have, or what you don't have. Life is just not like that. Our challenges in life are to make a difference in things that are important in the sight of God. And you know, everyone says, oh, you know, I try to be so Christ-like. I try to imitate Jesus, and I try to be nice, and I try to be kind, and I try to be merciful. That's good. Looks great. What about trying to be the one that says, if you want to be my disciple, you must take up your cross daily and follow me? See, being Christ-like isn't a question of everyone gets warm fuzzies and everybody gets a big hug and we have a big circle where we pass a candle around and tell everybody how blessed I am. Life's not like that. And that challenge in our life to be faithful in the midst of life on life terms and the things that come along with life. You know, and we look at it. Years ago, when I was in vocation work and the local newspaper wanted to do a little story about vocations. And the young reporter came and she sat down with me and she said, Father, it looks like not a lot of people want to commit themselves to priesthood or religious life these days. And I said, you know, isn't that something? It seems like a lot of people don't want to commit themselves to anything these days. Have you looked at the marriage statistics? What happens? What happens when right at 60, 65% of marriages break up in the first 7 years? What's going on there? What's going on there? Why is it that, you know, we're going to all live happily ever after until we disagree? All live happily ever after until I have to make a sacrifice. All live happily ever after until I have to do without something that I want. And that challenge of the gospel message to store up things that matter in the sight of God, that isn't just going around giving out free lunches. The things that matter in the sight of God are whether or not we accept what God has in store for me. And anyone who is bought into the popular television notion of religion that, you know, if it's good, Jesus wants prosperity. And Jesus doesn't want us to suffer. And Jesus doesn't want us to have hard times. A little girl in my parish left and she went to college and she just got whoever they gave her. She had a born-again Christian little girl. The little girl threw away 3 sets of contacts that first semester because she knew if she prayed hard enough, Jesus was going to make her not need contact lenses. What are you smoking? Where did we get this Santa Claus notion of Jesus? That if we love Jesus and we pray, life is going to be wonderful. Our kids are going to be perfect. Our marriage is going to be easy, and money's going to keep coming in. The only place the money keeps coming in is to people who get up on the pulpit and profess that nonsense, and people think they'll get it if they support them. That's the only place that the money keeps coming in. The challenge of discipleship, of storing up things that are treasures in the sight of God, are about having the grace, the wisdom, the courage, and the commitment to follow Christ. And Matthew and Mark say, anyone who wants to be my disciple must take up his cross and follow me. And Luke says, anyone who wants to take up be my disciple must take up their cross daily and follow me. You know what? Daily, it's difficult being married. Daily, it's wonderful being married. Daily, it's difficult in raising children. Daily, it's wonderful in raising children. Daily, it's difficult in committing yourself to some form of work or profession in order to provide for those that you love. Daily, sometimes it's the best thing you've ever done. But there's no such thing. There's no such thing as this, they all lived happily ever after. that we don't do that here. We do that only in the presence of God because He's merciful and compassionate. And when we talk about storing up treasures in the sight of God, it's not like, oh, well, good, I gave $1,000 to the church, so, you know, that's one store on my punch card with God. Look, yeah, supporting your church is important, but if you think you're going to write a check and that's going to get you to heaven, please don't be so confused. We don't write a check to get our passport punched for heaven. Now, certainly, yes, we need the generosity, we need the support of the church, all that stuff. But we have to live that. We have to live that. We don't buy salvation. We can't buy salvation. We buy salvation not with money, but with our willingness to engage ourselves in the lives of people who need. We buy salvation with a willingness to accept the challenges and the trials and the crosses that God asks us to carry. We buy our salvation by being willing to sacrifice and love for people that God has entrusted to our care. That's how we buy it. This is not a cash or a credit card deal. And that understanding of the treasures that we store up. And think about it. You've all seen it. I've got brothers and sisters who haven't talked to each other in 30 years because someone got the damn silverware when Mama died. And she promised it to me. And over silverware, we're not a family anymore. We don't talk, we don't go to weddings, we don't go to baptism, we don't go to funerals. Over silverware. And guess what, baby? That silverware is going to last long after you, or you can't destroy that stuff. You'll be dead and gone. And the silverware's in someone's drawer somewheres. And we've broken up homes and families because we fight over stuff. You know, in our area, we went through Hurricane Katrina. A lot of people lost everything. Some people lost everything and was so grateful that the most important thing that they had, they saved, their families. Others lost their source of income and couldn't handle it and committed suicide. Just too much, I have no way to make a living. I know that's got to be very difficult, but when you look at your wife and your family, your husband, your family, and say, all I got out of this was my wife and kids, I couldn't save anything else, who would you trade for that? What are we thinking about? Would it have been okay if you kept your business but you lost a couple of your kids? What are we thinking? But we buy into a mentality. We buy into a mentality of convenience. We buy into a mentality of individualism. We buy into a mentality of prosperity. We buy into a mentality of convenience. We think that, you know, we're supposed not to suffer in this life. Because if God really loves us, we're not going to suffer. And if we have any suffering, any challenges, we must be doing something wrong, and so God must be mad at us, so we've got to change. If you're called to suffer in this life, it's an invitation from Christ who says, if you want to be my disciple, take up your cross and follow me. And understand what's really important in this life. We can talk more about that when we come back. Stay with us. Hi, I'm Father Jeff Bae from Closer Walk Catholic Communications. Thank you for being here today, and a special thanks for the support that you give us. First of all, your prayerful support we so desperately need, and also your financial support. We are donor-driven, and that is what keeps us on the air today. As you well know, the truth is in great demand and in very short supply, and mainstream media is not going to bring you the truth of the Gospels of our Lord Jesus Christ because that's not socially acceptable and it's not politically correct. Certainly we all realize that when this life journey's over, we don't stand before the Supreme Court, we stand before the throne of God. Therefore, with great clarity and great charity, to pronounce the truth of the gospel is important. Your prayers, your financial support enables us to do that. So we thank you, and may God bring you closer in your walk with the Lord each day. God bless you. Then he said, Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions. And then he said, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded of you, and the things that you have prepared, to whom will they belong? Thus it will be for all who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich in the matters of God. Hello and welcome back to Close to Walk. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you came back to join us. To whom will all this belong? You know, this is going to sound funny, but I really enjoy good funerals. I know it sounds strange, but when I say a good funeral, it's so nice to be with the family at that time in their life where, you know, grandmother, grandfather have died. The family's all there. They're very, very close. And then they start telling the grandma and the grandpa stories, and they start relaying what these people meant. And it's really, really a wonderful thing. You know, Papa always told us they would always do this, and every Sunday morning at their house we would, whatever. And they've got these stories, and you realize there's a legacy. There's a legacy that they have left. And when it comes to a will, there's probably not much more than anyone to go through the old house and either take a piece of furniture or a favorite coffee cup or a pot or a pan. When my grandmother died, it was interesting because the 16 grandchildren, which I'm one of, you know, they just, okay, everybody called them Mommy. Everybody wants to go to Mommy's house. And I had a cousin go in there and he said, I know what I want. I want that rice pot that's about this big and feeds 27 people, okay? Because every Saturday we had lunch there and people would come, and my grandmother would cook a little pot of rice, but everybody ate and everybody had enough. And it was just kind of, it was a legacy of generosity. It was a legacy of hosting. It was a legacy of people being invited and welcomed and warm into the home. And it was and it was really fun. All the different little things we chose, because it was just, you know, everything that she had to give, she gave to us while she was alive. There was no will to fight over. There was no money to fight over. Her legacy was a living legacy, and pray God it continues in my generation, and then in my nieces and my nephews, and on and on and on. But that's the legacy. And it becomes a living legacy. And it's not about the lawyer telling us what we get. We know what we've got the moment we lose them. We know what we've lost because of their life and how they've lived and what their life meant to our life, our sense of well-being, our knowledge of faith, our knowledge of family, our knowledge of love, our knowledge of forgiveness. You know, that's you don't store that in a lawyer's office. You store that in the heart of the next generation. And one of the things that you hear all the time, well, if something happens to you, will your family and loved ones be protected? And then they want to say some insurance, okay? And then they want to tell you how to make prearranged needs to make sure that, you know, that someone's not stuck with your funeral bill. And then they want to tell you, you know, how to do all the stuff so that you can refinance your house and you can live there and your family gets nothing, but they get to take it after you. They got all sorts of scams going on here about allegedly protecting your loved ones and preparing for the future. Let me tell you something. If the only thing that's being left behind is on a piece of paper in your lawyer's office, I'm here to tell you, you're doing something wrong. That's the only legacy that you have. It's bound up in a legal document. You need to rethink what your life means to the lives of the people that God has entrusted to your care. I heard of a Jewish rabbi talking about a moral last will and testament. And that is to think about some of the things that are not left in a legal document, but left in the hearts and minds of those people who are most important to us. So I have developed what I call a moral last will and testament. It's available on our website, but this was a perfect gospel to go over it, and I want to go over it. I, blank, being of pure heart and sound of mind, I'm not sure I can get away with that part, but anyway, hereby bequeath to my children the following. Knowing that God is the center of my life, and one day I hope to be with you in God's presence for all eternity, what I would hope you would know about God is. What notion have you given to your children about who God is? Certain that through my religion, I'm not only connected with God, but have grown in my desire for Him. I hope that your religion would provide for you the following. As I've lived out my faith life, what do my children think my faith life has provided for me in terms of the way I've lived my life? Aware of how important family is and how much it has shaped my life, I would hope that you would receive from this family and pass on to your family the following. You know, when everything else goes, and at least here on earth, we need someone to turn to, that's the only one who's going to really be there. That's our only go-to. Knowing that the world can be a tough place when you are alone, it is important that you find one person who makes the joys twice as good and the sorrows only half as bad. The most important thing that you can look for in a spouse is, what do they see in their mother and father? What do they see in that marriage? What is it that you provide for everything? Knowing that we all search for happiness and aware that we can only be happy when we are doing what God has called us to, the question that I would like to ask before you make a decision is, how many of us ask our children? Priesthood, religious life? Is God calling you to that? Is He calling you to marriage? Is He calling you to marriage for this person? Are you undergoing this career for the right reason, to really help and heal? Or are you going into it to have a bucket load of money? Confident that in the knowledge that I've been loved and accepted through my life, what I would want you to know and have in your life and marriage is, because I've been blessed with children, and knowing that you are on loan from God until we are all together again in His presence, the most important thing you can teach a child is, you know, they say more is caught than is taught. What are the things kids pick up from us that we think are important? Dealing with my own shortcomings throughout life and having had to ask forgiveness all my life, what I would hope you would know about asking for forgiveness and being able to forgive is, how important is that we are aware of our own faults, can admit them, and ask one another and God to forgive us. What I have become is not due to me, but to so many people who provided so much throughout all of my life. It is their kindness that has enabled me. So about gratitude, I want you to always remember. Lord says, where are the other 9? We're not all 10 made whole. Only one bothered to say thank you. How many of us show the example of gratitude to the next generation by being grateful for what we've been given, the gifts, the talents, the abilities, and feeling like gratitude is part of our response to God? Having been fortunate enough to always provide for those that I love, I realize it is important to have money, but never for money to have me. I would hope you would view your wealth as, it's a priority question. How big is money in your life? How big do you make money in the future of the lives of your children? What are you willing to risk to gain financially? Grateful for those who've always been there when I needed them, to laugh, to love, to help, to heal. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. What I would hope you would know about friendship is it's a loyalty, friendship, a sense of honor, a sense of duty, a sense of responsibility to other people. It's basically challenging. It ain't all about you. It never is and never has been. And passing that on to the next generation. Finally, this old world can be a tricky place, and it can change in an instant. As we travel through life, there are certain things I want you always to remember. What life lessons, whether it's been in tragedy or in triumph, what life lessons have we empowered the next generation to know, to hold on to move through life with, to be able to face whatever comes, and to have the grace and the courage of their convictions? See, this really is about priorities. It really is about a legacy. It's not about the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's about what we pass on to the next generation. And the only way we make the world a little bit better place is influencing the people that God has entrusted to our care. And if we care to change their lives through our love and our faith and our witness, then eventually we change the world. If we don't care to change them and they're out there on their own, we keep heading in the same direction we've been going. We thank you for being with us. May each day bring you closer in your walk with the Lord. God bless you.